I hope you're having a great day, great afternoon, great night, just a great time in general when you're watching this video. This book I decided to review today. This was the book I couldn't really finish. We're going to be reviewing All the Bright Places. Honestly, yes, there is a Netflix movie for this, and it honestly cuts out like 80 to 90% of the violent and depressing shit that happens in this book. Honestly, I look at it like the Netflix movie is like this book light. Basically, it's the easy version. This is hard mode. The movie's easy mode. This is hard mode, and this is for teenagers. This is a book written for teenagers, or at the very least young adults. They're 18 years old, just about to graduate high school, and holy fuck, this book is dark. I'm going to give you the rating. I'm going to give you a slight summary of the characters, all the different things I kind of have written down about them, and then I'm going to basically give you a summary of the story, and that'll kind of be all it for today. On an actual writing scale, because it does flip between characters and stuff like that, and I like some of the exaggerated outlines in the book and how they design the writing for each of the characters, I would say that the book is well written as about an 8 or 9 out of 10. It's tough because it's honestly so depressing that I want to give it a lower number, and it makes it really difficult. So I watched it on Netflix because that's where it was released at first. The main character, Theodore Finch, he has an older sister named Kate and a younger sister named Decca, and he may or may not have a half-sibling named Josh Raymond or Jay Raymond. I know it's a J name, and I know the second name is Raymond, or that's his whole first name. His dad was a heavy cheater, or at least cheated once that they know of, when he left to go live with this family, and they believe that, or at least Theodore believes that his dad had previously cheated a long time ago and then found out about the kid and left them to go raise this kid as trying to, have a kid that isn't a fuck up, that's a boy, because he feels like he fucked up Theodore. Which honestly, when you get to the ending and the dad is crying, you start feeling for Violet, which is the other character, Violet Markey. You kind of start feeling for her because she is literally pissed off because she's met his dad, heard the stories and all this other shit, and this dude is a complete piece of shit. But you also know it from Theodore's perspective later. This guy is such an abusive, alcoholic asshole, and to see him crying at the funeral later is honestly insane. It's like, you were a colossally piece of shit parent. No earthly way, even with this new kid, can you think you're a good parent. It is. He basically so Theodore throughout the story basically only has 2 friends, basically. Everyone else calls him Freak because he's done a lot of weird shit. He's kind of think about Punk Spider-Man in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Basically talks just like him, just kind of says off the wall shit sometimes, and I kind of feel that there because I do that too sometimes. Maybe not to the degree that this dude does, but I have myself done the same thing. So only has 2 friends, Charlie and Brenda, and basically they are kind of silent friends. They do hang out with him and stuff like that, and they do hang out just in general are friends with him, but they don't really stick up for him. They more so are just kind of quiet about it until, spoiler alert, kills himself later. Then Violet comes along, and she's the first person that he does kind of force her to start being friends with him because he inserts himself into a project in kind of the beginning of the story to get them to start working together so that way he can become friends with her, which I will talk about once I get to the little summary of the story. So there's parts where it talks about him having a violent past and blanking spells, and basically throughout the story you're kind of figuring that he may have bipolar depression or something. You're never really certain because he never goes to a doctor, never really gets a diagnosis, he's just seeing counselors. So his chapters are all called Awake, or they're counting down his awake, because sometimes he has asleep moments where he is basically stuck in a depressive state for a really long time. After meeting Violet, he's able to stay awake, and she's basically his source for he throughout the story. I'm not really gonna remember which parts he tries to do it at, except for one when I mention it in the story. But he also tries to kill himself a ton, mainly from either drowning or talks about hanging or carbon monoxide. Like, it starts getting so many different types of ways he tries that it's actually really dark and depressing. And it's like, fuck. It's like no one notices, like not even his sister or his other sister or his mom or his dad. And it's crazy that like you start going into it later and they talk about how people that are depressed are really good at hiding it. And it's like, yeah, maybe that's why throughout my years I've started really paying attention to people, is because I want to be aware of how people are doing, because I know asking them about it can really trigger people. Do you know how crazy it is that we're all such on like needle's edge that like asking you if you're okay is fucking crazy? So now I'm gonna talk about Violet Markey. I've said pretty much everything for Theodore Finch. So Violet has these glasses throughout the story that you find out are her sister's, and it takes her kind of a while to finally take them off because she's trying to remember and keep those feelings alive of like knowing that they were from her. So it's kind of interesting to see that kind of growth. I kind of mentioned that in I'm Not Okay With This, how the girl starts wearing her dad's dog tags. It's kind of like the same thing, except she wanted to like see how her sister saw the world, basically. Violet is one of the popular girls. This is one of the things I can add here, because I forgot to mention about Theodore, is he's the weird kid, like the really weird kid that everyone picked on and shit like that. And she's like cheerleader popular. But an accident happens because her sister dies. They were coming home from a party, they slid on ice, and her sister was killed on impact, and she was comatose. And it's a year for both of them. A year for his dad divorcing his mom, and a year from her sister dying. When it's her chapters, they're all counting down to graduation or freedom, when she's going to be able to finally get away from everything and finally go to college and stuff like that. So they're really both vastly different thinkers already. He's drowning and she's like, I'm kind of like treading water here. When you read their emotional space, like she's definitely still doing bad, but in his writing, he is like brave facing everything and like drowning, and she's like, I mean, like the water's definitely getting shitty over here, but like I'm okay. Like that's really what it looks like comparatively, but when they're together they're fine. So it's very interesting. But the moment she shifts a little bit, he shifts immensely. So it's really not like they're fine, it's like fake fine, which is not a healthy relationship. To round out talking about both of the characters, they both have respective vehicles. I can't remember why they're called which ones. His is a little sedan SUV thing, or Saturn SUV, that's called the Little Bastard, and hers is called Leroy. It's a bike. So that's just interesting to mention. A quick little blurb about the story, and then I'm done talking about this very sad fucking book. Like, it's a great book to read once and then don't pick it up again. I tried to read it again, and the reason it took me so long is I keep fucking crying and then needing to like blow my nose and then keep going. It's really depressing. Trust me. But it is well worth the watch. I think it also helps you to recognize signs of people that are depressed and things that they might be doing. The book starts with both of them up in a tower, and each of them are basically trying to kill themselves. He's trying to kill himself because he's trying to use it as a control thing. That's his whole thing throughout the book, is he's trying to use suicide or his attempts as a way to control being alive. And she wants to die because she really misses her sister. Basically, he finally gets her down before she's able to kill herself, and she accidentally almost falls, and he saves her. And then he's getting ready to go over and then almost falls, and she grabs him, and that's when everyone sees them and they get written up in the newspaper, and it's a whole thing. Everyone thinks she's a hero but doesn't know that she actually was the one that was up there first and almost killed herself. So the whole story follows them basically growing attached to each other, starting with him in a class, connecting them together with a project, her establishing boundaries of not being able to get into a car because of what happened with her sister, him eventually getting her over it by literally pushing her into getting into the car, not physically but like emotionally, which she finally does. They start working on their project, they find things, basically like geocaching, and then eventually it culminates into him continuing to have these depressive episodes. And then when she finally kind of finds out about it necessarily is when he tries to dive into the area he ends up killing himself in later. It's really sad, and honestly it's the hardest part of the whole fucking book. And basically they talk for a bit and kind of go into a weird place, and their love story keeps going, which I'm like, I can't tell if you're doing it out of like trying to keep him alive or whatever, or if you actually care about him. I'm not exactly sure. You gotta read it for yourself. Eventually, the two of them, he starts having more and more episodes to where he finally tries to kill himself after an accident happens that cuts them off. And she doesn't find out about it until another girl from their school that actually is a popular girl. And this is where him, Theodore, and this girl connect, actually previously, and she's actually like, so I guess you're not the only freak. And it kind of does make him feel better. And I feel like if she had actually been more open, because she does try and do it after his funeral, if she had just been more open before, I think he actually might have been more okay, because he'd have more than two pseudo friends and a girlfriend. You know, he really didn't have that much of anyone. His sister barely checked on him, and his mother kind of pretended like he's invisible throughout the story. Same with his dad. He finally snaps, does that. She confronts him about this on his birthday, which I get you gotta do it, but also you might have want to wait a day. Just saying. And that causes him to spiral further. It finally culminates in him going to all the attractions in their state, sending everyone a note, her trying to find him like a murder mystery, sorry. She finally goes to the place that he previously tried to drown himself before, tries looking for him, finally calls 911, they find him. And honestly, it's the single most depressing. You also get to understand what someone feels like, feeling like they could have done something for that person, and you get to kind of understand what that's like, and you get to see their perspective and how well it's written. Sorry, I'm like freshly from finishing this book about like an hour ago, and I'm still not fully recovered from crying, and I keep catching myself here and there. She feels like she could have saved him, and I've had people in my life that I feel like I could have saved. And honestly, throughout this book, the problem is a lot of my life, especially high school, could definitely be attributed to more of Finch's, but also I have had a lot of people where I've been more in Violet's shoes, where I do finally come out of it, but it takes me forever because I am so frequented by death that it's like, it's wild that realistically how my life has been is a majority of my early life was finches, and now I'm out of the house and my life is more like violets. And this is all high school stuff, but like emotionally, that's how my evolution kind of has been. This book, I guess I'll give these final details. This book is definitely worth the read, because like I said, you get people's perspective, but you also get signs and you get to see the change in people and how it's described. Maybe you can just learn things from this book. That's all I'll say. It's a good book. I hope you check it out at least once. I would at least watch the movie and you'll be fine. You don't have to cry as hard as I did. I will say the scream in the movie for when she goes to find his body is way more depressing, but the book is just really difficult. If you're gonna be interested in this, go watch the movie. That's my final thoughts. Peace, guys.